Hello and welcome back to the Manifestation Method podcast. Today we're diving into a topic that I believe is often misunderstood, maybe even feared, yet it holds the key to profound transformation and alignment. And that is the topic of Teshuva. When most people hear the word Teshuva, they think of guilt, judgment, or a religious obligation. But I want to invite you to hear it differently today. I want to have you internalize Teshuva as a path of returning to your true self, a practice that clears the stories and blocks that no longer serve you, and opens the door to a life of clarity, possibility, and inspired action. This episode is about refreshing our understanding of Teshuva, seeing it not as a moral checklist, but as a deep, empowering, soul-guided practice that reconnects us to the essence of who we truly are. Before we begin, I invite you to take a deep breath with me, perhaps close your eyes if you can, or simply soften your gaze. Inhale deeply through your nose. Feel your lungs expand. And exhale gently, letting your body release tension. This is your sacred pause. This is where Teshuva begins. Let's get into it. Becoming a co-creator with the Creator is your birthright. Together, we'll journey into your deepest authenticity. Because the more you align with who you truly are, the more effortlessly you call in the life that you desire and deserve. And most importantly, the more you step into your soul's highest purpose. Welcome to the Manifestation Method podcast, your number one source for Kabbalistic manifestation. Here we combine the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah, modern psychology, and quantum physics to help you achieve real, tangible manifestation results with my proven Abra method. I'm Ayelet Polonsky, and I'm here to guide you on your journey of manifesting a life that is aligned, expansive, and deeply connected to your highest self through the sacred energetic mechanics of Kabbalistic manifestation. To learn how to use Kabbalistic manifestation to transform your life from the inside out, go to ayeletpolonsky.com or download the Manifestation Method app. Let's open the gates of manifestation together. See, many people hear the word Teshuva and they think repentance. Maybe you've been told it's something religious or something that only applies to people who follow strict Orthodox practice. But I want you to hear it differently today. Teshuva is the path of return, returning to your essence, returning to your soul, a return to the pure, unlimited being that you were when you first entered the world. In fact, a more accurate translation of the word Teshuva itself is not repentance, but actually to return. What exactly is it that we're being called to return to? So I invite us to think about Teshuva as a returning to the essence of who we were when we were really little. Think about it. When you were born, you were a baby, a blank slate. You were wide open, free, full of infinite possibility. You didn't have limits, at least not self-imposed limits. You didn't have rules that you imposed on yourself. You didn't have a story about who you were supposed to be. You simply were pure potential at your essence. You didn't inherit the belief that you were good or bad, right or wrong, too much of this or not enough of that. You simply were. in your very essence, one with the Creator. And that Creator created you with all of the codes you needed to actualize your fullest potential in this lifetime. But then what happens when we reach the age where we begin to speak, where we start to understand, where we begin to make meaning of the world, of others, and most importantly of ourselves? Slowly, through the stories we absorb from our families, our communities, our culture, we begin to build layers over that pure, radiant essence. Some of these layers are beautiful. Lessons of kindness, courage, resilience, possibility. They do support us and help us navigate life effectively and efficiently. But other stories we adopt are heavy, restricting, untrue, and limiting. These are what the Kabbalists call klipot, shells that cover and block the light within us. So klipot are fascinating, in my opinion, because they are not inherently evil. In fact, they are deeply protective. These klipot arise as a response to trauma or to experiences that the soul or psyche cannot yet fully integrate. Right? When we encounter something painful or confusing or overwhelming, our system creates a story or a pattern around it. And this story becomes a layer, a shell that blocks, that keeps us safe, or at least feels safe from experiencing that same pain ever again. So think of klipot like protective armor that your soul has created. And at first, they really do serve a purpose, right? They help you survive and navigate and cope with the intensity of life. But over time, if these shells accumulate and remain unexamined, they begin to obscure your inner light. They distort perception, limiting your creativity, your capacity to love, your ability to feel joy, and they block your access to the infinite possibilities that life has in store for you. And so klipot form whenever we adopt beliefs about ourselves that aren't true, often inherited from family or culture. They form when we internalize judgments from others as our own, and we believe those judgments. Klipot form when we react habitually to fear, shame, or past pain. And they form to resist or suppress aspects of our own being in order to make sure that we feel safe or accepted in our environment and by those around us. So they essentially or initially served a really important purpose. But the problem is when we hold on to them for too long, they start to convince us that they're just who we are, that they are our identity. And so the key to their mystery is that they can be cleared. And clearing them is transformative. So when we face klipot with awareness, compassion, and conscious intention, they dissolve. They're not destroyed in a violent or aggressive way. Rather, they are released gently, allowing the light of our essence to shine through once again. So practices like teshuva, reflection, internal excavation, I call it, somatic release, conscious forgiveness, and realignment with our soul's truth are the paths that clear these shells, these blockages. So clearing klipot is what allows us to remember that the essence behind the stories that we've accumulated, the essence behind all of them is unlimited, is radiant, and fully capable of creating a life that mirrors its abundant essence, its infinite potential. And this is why Teshuva, the practice of returning or remembering who you truly are, is so vital, especially during this time of year of Elul leading into Tishrei, the high holidays in the Jewish tradition. It is now that we get to use this process by which we peel back these layers one by one and reconnect with the light that has been there all along. And here's the thing. The truth is that light never went away. It is there waiting for you to access it again and again and again. It is ever present. You know, I remember a time in my life, and maybe some of you can relate, where I felt totally disconnected from myself. I was running and achieving. I was overgiving or overperforming. I was trying to be good in every way that I could possibly imagine, right? Trying to be good enough. But deep down, something felt off. I couldn't access the sense of wholeness that I remembered feeling as a little itty bitty little girl. And then one year, well into my adult life, already on a journey of inner exploration and personal growth, and having begun to understand what Teshuva really is from this more elevated perspective, I sat quietly with a journal. And I asked myself, softly, but with all the courage that I could muster, I asked myself, who am I beneath all of this? Like, who am I really, though? And what unfolded, what was revealed to me when I got quiet enough to take that sacred pause and listen to that voice inside, was a truth that I had been too busy to see, that I had been living inside the stories that I absorbed as a child, right? Once I was able or old enough to create meaning and adopted stories that I picked up from experiences, from my environment, from my adults, stories like I'm not enough, or I must please in order to be loved, or I need to earn love, meaning I'm not inherently worthy of love, right? Stories that said, you'll only be seen as accomplished once you're married, once you have kids, once you make X amount of money, once you look X way. And the more I clung to these stories, the further I drifted from my essence, from the part of me that knows that literally anything is possible. And the irony, the beautiful irony, is that the manifestations of my deepest, heart-longed for dreams never came from trying harder to fit in, never came from trying harder to prove my worth, or to become someone I wasn't. No. They revealed themselves the deeper I went into discovering the truth of who I am, the truth of who you are, which is an infinite being, radiant and whole, filled with untapped potential. And the truth is, I am worthy simply because I exist. Because the day I was born was the day that God decided that the universe could not go on without me in it. And that means that my existence alone is enough. My presence is enough. I do not need to prove anything to anyone. And that, my friends, applies to you too. The essence of who you are right now, as you are, without needing to do all the inner work. I mean, yes, we must do inner work and we must strive to grow and we must get into personal development and always try to become a more elevated, aligned version of ourselves. But like, the truth is, even without all that, the essence of who you are right now is enough, is worthy, is deserving, and is infinite. And so that moment when I was journaling, and that was what was revealed to me, that most almost trembling realization, because really to like own that my essence is abundance, that my essence is worthy and valuable, right? That realization was the beginning of my real tshuva journey. It was the start of returning to myself in the most profound way, right? Because in that place, what I found was radical acceptance. Radical acceptance. I was able to forgive myself for everything and anything that I did and didn't do that I was judging myself for. That is radical acceptance. It's a journey of honoring my own boundaries, of choosing me first, of finally letting go of the exhausting need to please everyone around me. Because God knows that takes up a lot of headspace and heart space, right? It was the moment I allowed myself to accept something that had always felt previously impossible. And that was that it's okay to disappoint others, right? In fact, we're all going to disappoint each other. It's human. Hi, Ayelet here. I just wanted to pop in and say I'm so excited to officially introduce the Manifestation Method portal, membership, and app. This is your home for all things Kabbalistic manifestation. You'll get access to my monthly live workshops, soul deep hypno activations and attunements, all of our manifestation courses, and our global community of manifestors. And the best part? It's just $26 a month. That's less than a latte a week. Come manifest alongside me and start creating the life you desire and deserve. Head over to ayeletpolonsky.com to join us. Right? That I don't need everyone to like me, and I don't need everyone's approval, and I don't need to shrink to make someone else feel comfortable. Right? I hope that I make others feel comfortable around me, but I don't need to contort myself and try to shrink and make myself be in the image of what I think others want me to be in order for them to be able to be themselves. No, I get to just be me fully. And if you're into it, beautiful. Let's be friends. Let's vibe, right? And if you're not, that's okay. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. Right? And in that space of acceptance, something really beautiful happened. The moment I stopped judging myself, I stopped judging others. That is really deep and really profound. The moment I stopped judging myself, I stopped judging others. Right? I realized that compassion for myself naturally expanded outwards, and that any judgments I ever had about somebody else were in some way, shape, or form judgments that I was carrying or believing about myself. So when I freed myself of my own internal judgments about me, I was able to see everyone as made in the image of God. And I got to see their godly essence, their abundant essence, their radiant essence. And these realizations, while they can be tender, raw, and real, for me at least, were the doorway to a life of inner freedom, to liberation that I hadn't dared to imagine. A life where my choices, my love, my presence, all come from a place of truth, not fear. Where I can finally breathe into the fullness of who I am and let my light shine unapologetically. And that takes a lot of courage, Because other people who are afraid to shine their light are going to look at you shining your light so bright and they're going to be like, whoa, why am I not shining my light? And then they might have judgments about you for shining your light and having the courage to do so. But again, remember, their judgments about you are coming from the places in them that they're judging about themselves. So real tshuva is a freeing yourself of self-judgment. And that is remembering who you truly are. Because at your essence, there is nothing to judge. You are just light. You are good. You are made in the image of God. Like, whoa, God decided that you had to be created out of all the millions of possibilities that could have been created. You were the chosen one. That's a miracle, right? And so if you're listening to this, I want you to imagine something for a moment. That within you exists a place of absolute stillness. A place untouched by expectation or judgment or obligation. A place inside of you, we can call it your Kodesh HaKodeshim, your Holy of Holies, the God particle inside. Right? And that place is simply yours. And in that quiet, sacred space, you might begin to notice or be honest enough with yourself to realize from a place of real love and compassion all the stories that you've been carrying, right? The ones that were never truly yours to begin with. Stories about who you should be or what you should do or who you need to please and what you need to prove. And that's exhausting. And that is you living in the expectations of everybody else except yourself. And at what point are you going to stop and say, I am done abandoning me? So notice how these stories have shaped your life, how they've weighed on your shoulders, how they've taken up room or space, or they've taken up space in your mind and they're not even paying rent up there. And they've then influenced your choices and your behavior and how you interact with others in the world. Right? And some stories might surprise you. They might reveal to you ways in which you've been limiting yourself or playing small or shrinking your brilliance or dimming your light to fit someone else's expectations. And so this sacred noticing, this gentle, compassionate observation is the first step of tshuva. It is the step of awareness. Noticing does not require judgment or criticism, and that is important. This noticing doesn't ask you to fix or perform or force. It simply asks you to see, to feel, to recognize, like a parent looking at a child with so much love and compassion when the child is hurting. Right? And to acknowledge the layers that have formed over your pure essence, the klipot that have grown around your soul in order to protect it, right? Even if they now keep your light partially hidden. So there's a radical honesty here that's being asked of you during this time of tshuva. And here's the beautiful truth. The very act of awareness, simply noticing, begins to dissolve the weight of these stories. The moment you can just see them clearly with honesty and compassion, you reclaim a little piece of yourself. You remember that beneath all the conditioning, all the obligations, all the shoulds, your essence remains untouched, radiant, infinite. So tshuva begins in this quiet, intimate awareness, the gentle returning to the self, the remembering of your own truth. In fact, one of my favorite teachings, which I often share, is this, and that is that the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves become our reality. That is Manifestation 101, friends. And from a Kabbalistic perspective, this principle is rooted in the very structure of creation. So the Zohar teaches that the word itself was formed through speech and thought. I mean, take that in for a moment. The world itself was formed through speech and thought. that the letters, words, and intentions we use, even with our own minds, holds the power to shape reality. Right? If God is the macrocosm, the ultimate creator, and we are made in the image of God, which makes us a microcosm of this macro creative force, then we are co-creators. We have creative capabilities inside of us. And if God used speech, words, to create the cosmos, what kind of universe are we creating for ourselves in our 3D reality in our lives with our words? Right? Every thought you think, every belief, every internal story acts like a blueprint for our soul and the life that gets reflected back to us. Right? This is what manifestation is all about, is knowing how our thoughts, speech, emotions, or vibration literally send signals to the quantum field and programs that field in every moment with the vibration we're putting out, with the stories we're telling ourselves about ourselves. Right? And the thing is, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. Because everything is story. Everything is story. Right? So think about that. Every time we tell ourselves, whether consciously or unconsciously, I'm not enough, or I cannot create the life I long for, we are giving energy and form to that story. And the Kabbalists call this process tzimtzum, within the soul. It's the constriction of infinite potential into the limited patterns that we've adopted. And these patterns, or klipot, begin to shape our external lives, right? Ultimately keeping us confined to the reality of the stories that we believe. And, the Torah really echoes this truth in Bereshit, that the world is created through God's speech. Like I said, God said, let there be light. And it was so. And just as God's words brought reality into being, so do our inner worlds. So do our beliefs. So do our stories carve out our personal reality. And when we internalize limiting narratives, we are actually engaging in a creative act, one that can either confine or liberate our soul. Because let's face it, we are all working the law of attraction, whether we like it or not, for good or for worse, right? And this is why Teshuva is so powerful. It is not simply about regret or acknowledging how much you've sinned this last year, right? And it's not just about asking for forgiveness, right? What Teshuva is the conscious undoing of limiting narratives. And so the Arizal and other Kabbalists teach that Teshuva clears klipot, right? Allowing the soul's true nature, radiant and infinite, to shine fully. Right? The Ramak in Tomer Devorah emphasizes that the highest service of a human being is to align one's inner consciousness with the divine source, right? To act not out of fear, shame, and obligation, but out of clarity and alignment with the essence of your soul, which is God. Right? Every soul descends into this world cloaked in layers, right? All these klipot. Right? And so this act of tshuva is removing these veils consciously, layer by layer, pulling back the layers of judgment, of fears, of stories, and reconnecting to your infinite potential. Right? So ultimately, tshuva is not about shame. It is not about guilt. It is not a list of shoulds or a moral burden. It is a sacred tool for self-reflection. It's a spiritual practice designed to help us step into our fullest potential. Right? And so our sages brought down a step-by-step process for tshuva very precisely so that we could embody it, not just as an intellectual concept, but as a lived practice. So here are briefly the 4 core steps of Teshuva. And the first is recognition, right? Recognition is the first spark of teshuva. It's awareness. It's the gentle act of noticing where you've lost touch with yourself or where your actions have strayed from your essence. So it's a simple awareness of what's been holding me back. What have been my limitations? Where have I been playing small? Just noticing, nothing more. Step one is a recognition, right? This is what I could have done differently this year. For example, imagine you snapped at a loved one or said yes to something that you actually meant no to because you didn't have the energy or desire to do it, right? But you said yes simply out of obligation, right? So recognition is pausing and seeing, I crossed my own boundary. I acted from fear of judgment rather than from alignment with my soul. And it's not about guilt. You're human. We've all got stuff we need to do tshuva on. It's about illuminating the pattern so that awareness can guide the next steps. And that takes me to step two, which is regret. Okay, now this one is very much often misunderstood, right? Regret here is not self-punishment. It's not looking at yourself and saying, oh, I'm such a bad person. But rather it is a heartfelt acknowledgement, a softening of the heart for the moments that you forgot your essence or acted unconsciously. So regret, for example, would look like, maybe you withheld your opinion at work in order to avoid conflict, even though speaking up would have been authentic. And so regret is feeling the weight of that choice with compassion, right? I see now that I silenced myself, and I grieve that I didn't honor my truth in that moment. And this step opens the heart, which creates space for healing and release. Which then takes me to step three, which is release. This is the liberation step. So here we consciously let go of beliefs, habits, or patterns that no longer serve us. Sometimes this includes forgiveness of ourselves, of others, or even of our circumstances. And sometimes it's simply a decision to just act differently moving forward, releasing the way I was and stepping into a new way of being, a new version of myself. So for example, an example of release would be if you've been, let's say, people-pleasing or constantly overextending yourself in order to gain approval. So release is saying, I no longer need to sacrifice my well-being in order to feel worthy. I am allowed to honor my boundaries. It could also be forgiving yourself for past moments when you crossed your own limits and releasing that shame, the fear, and the judgment so that your inner light can shine unobstructedly. And then finally, the last step is return, right? So we return to alignment with our essence, which is what I've been talking about this whole time. This is the homecoming of the soul, of stepping fully into the part of yourself that knows you are whole, radiant, and limitless. So an example of returning would be after the recognition happens, right? And the heartfelt regret takes place, and there's a conscious release. You might choose to assert your boundaries in a situation that you would have maybe avoided in the past. Or maybe you make a decision to pursue a path that feels aligned with your soul, even if it feels scary, rather than just sitting and thinking about what you should do, right? Return is the embodiment of your truth. It's living as the infinite being you truly are, not as the stories that have been defining you. So ultimately, from a Kabbalistic perspective, every soul descends into this world to experience duality, to experience challenges, lessons, hardships sometimes, contrast. And this is precisely so that tshuva can become a practice. So each mistake, each misstep or moment when we fail to honor ourselves, is an opportunity to reconnect with our essence, to clear the klipot, and to step into greater alignment. Okay, and so this is why the month of Elul is so powerful, right? The month of Elul is the time where the sages say the king is in the field, meaning that the divine is especially accessible, especially close, and in there doing the spiritual surgery for you. You just have to show up to the dinner party, right? So this is the perfect time to clear klipot and release old stories and step back into your limitless nature. And this is why inside my Manifestation Method membership, I've created a brand new Elul portal just for you. And this portal is the exact protocol that my husband and I walk through together every single year. And I can tell you from my experience looking back every Elul at the previous Elul, when we look at what we wrote and the inner work we did, that the results have been nothing short of miraculous. Right? When we intentionally do this work, when we journal, release, realign, meditate on it, and set intentions, we begin to see the following year, the upcoming year rather, unfold in direct mirroring of the Teshuva that we practice during Elul and Tishrei. Right? It's not abstract. It's literal. It's quantum Kabbalah. It's tangible. It's transformative. And so inside the portal, I guide you through reflection exercises to really help you uncover the stories and klipot that have accumulated specifically for you. I guide you through somatic practices to release tension and stored energy that's been blocking you from accessing your essence. I've recorded hypno activations, which are hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, visualization, all wrapped up into a guided process to help you realign with your pure essence. And I give you a step-by-step structure to create the most expansive year ahead. It's truly a complete spiritual reset. And the beauty is anyone can participate, whether you've ever been on this spiritual path or are just curious about returning to your truest self. So you can find the link to join the portal in the show notes below this episode. So, my loves, to wrap up, I invite you to pause now, to take a deep breath, to place one hand over your heart and maybe one hand over your belly and just whisper to yourself, I am returning. I am remembering. I am coming home to myself. And feel those words land in your body. Teshuva is hope. Teshuva is possibility. Teshuva is the reminder that no matter what stories we've carried, no matter how far we've strayed, our essence is always waiting for us. And the invitation of Elul and of this moment is to step fully back into it. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for returning. And thank you for remembering. I hope to see you inside the Elul portal. And until then, may you continue to return again and again, even closer to the truth of who you are. Here's to your rising. If you enjoyed this episode, let's keep the conversation going inside the Manifestation Method portal app, your #1 destination for Kabbalistic manifestation. Inside, you'll unlock the secrets of manifestation through my proven Abra method, rooted in Kabbalah, psychology, and quantum physics, designed to help you manifest real, tangible results from the inside out. Join our global community of manifestors, explore our signature courses, monthly live manifestation workshops with me, Ayelet, and access our transformational hypno activations and attunements to rewire limiting beliefs and align with your soul's purpose. The app is available now on the Apple App Store and Google Play. To sign up, head over to ayeletpolonsky.com. Becoming a co-creator with the Creator is your birthright. Let's manifest the life you desire and deserve together.